What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? We are here live from Mafia Con 2025. Myself, Aaron Quinn from the Cover One Buffalo podcast, and my man, Anthony Prohaska from Disguised Coverage. What's going on, Anthony?
I'm good. It's nice to be here. It's nice to see the growth that this event has had, just even versus last year. You and I were talking about it earlier and just kind of where it started to where it is just in year two. I'm excited for year three and year four and beyond for this. And obviously excited to talk about the Bills today and another potentially exciting and maybe disappointing season, depending on how it ends.
Hopefully not disappointing. No, but you're right. We were just talking offline last year. Also a really nice setup. We had a great time.
Yes.
But dude, I remember having headphones on and my ears were
So
sweating inside the headphones. So way nicer here at Seneca One. Actually, my first time being down here
Same.
inside the building since they've redone it. So shout out to Dell, Reed, and everybody that put this together. Have done a great job.
Absolutely.
We're just following up Talking Buffalo podcast with Pat Moran and my good friend Tim Graham. They did a great job here today. Tough Maniac here giving us some love. But what we're really here to talk about is training camp. And Greg and I on our show have been really going through position groups. And as a content creator, this last month and a half is almost the worst time. We're finally getting into the good time to be a content creator and actually have something here to talk about. But as we ramp into training camp, I'm just like every fan out here at Buffalo Con where I'm getting more excited. Training camp tickets are flying off the shelves. Tough to get this year.
Yep.
But I kind of want to get into some of the specifics of what you and I are really looking forward to from our perspectives of training camp this year, because it's so much different in the past, where in the past it was always relying on what wide receiver 6 is going to come out of nowhere to help us out, right? What DB is going to come out of nowhere to really be the thing that
What
saves
hero
us.
we could like pin our hopes and dreams on.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that fans will fall in love with some undrafted free agent this summer that we'll have to argue about on the internet. But I want to jump into how we'll kind of break this down today is each side of the ball. We'll talk about offense, defense. I want to know a player that you're really excited to see this training camp and how that they're going to be integrated into that side of the ball. And then schematically, is there something different we're going to see? Because every year there's something, whether it's a big wrinkle or a small wrinkle, there is some addition. I think Sean McDermott gets probably unfair criticism of being conservative and stuck in his ways. And maybe the changes aren't always as dramatic as people want, but an uptick of a 10% of something throughout a year is substantial in the NFL. So let's start on the less sexy side of the ball, on the defensive side of the ball, which probably needs the biggest improvement here this offseason. I know you and Eric on Film Room did a great episode this week talking about third down struggles that they had. And so I'm assuming something that you're looking forward to has to do with improved success on there. But let's start with on the player side of the defense with a lot of new pieces coming via the draft, via free agent. Who's the one that you're most looking forward to seeing here at training camp at St. John Fisher?
So this question is really hard for me to answer on the defensive side of the ball because, and even like you alluded to it now, like defense is like the less sexy side. But as you also alluded to, it's definitely the side with more questions in terms of volume and more questions in terms of significance that need to be answered. And you could pick multiple position groups, multiple players. Oh, I'll go with TJ Sanders in terms of a guy that I'm really excited to see and looking to see because I talked about it a bit during the season and then throughout this offseason. You and I talked about it a bit on Twitter as well. And like also the meta of the Bills going for, like, would they go for more of a big body one tech or a space eater, somebody that would kind of limit displacement a bit more than they have in the past? And there were rumors that they were going to take Tyreek Williams from Ohio State if he was there at pick 30. He was not. They took Max Hairston, and then they traded up in round 2, and they got TJ Sanders. And between Sanders and Ogunjobi, both of those guys are more leaning harder into the direction they've already leaned in for years, really, which is inside rush, being responsible in the run. But if you had to pick one or the other in terms of the spectrum, you're leaning more towards pass rush than you are run defense. And with Ogunjobi being suspended for those first 6 games, and even when he comes back, I think TJ Sanders is going to play an important role. And that rotation is so important inside. His ability to factor as a pass rusher, but also his ability to mitigate displacement and handle double teams, I think is going to be tested early because teams are going to want to try and run the ball against the Bills defense. And with a group that has some questions on that entire defensive line because of suspensions, player ability, injuries, all these things. I think it's really like kind of all hands on deck on that defensive line, and especially on the interior, considering that's usually the lesser amount of bodies on the rotation. So I'm going to go with TJ Sanders, but I could have gone with another like 5 guys. There's a lot on defense to watch.
There's a lot of guys, and this is one of these things that I've been like thinking about because I knew we were going to talk about this and trying to kind of formulate my answer for it. One thing before I give you mine on the TJ Sanders thing. So how I view him is Daquan Jones in the waiting. And I don't know if you saw that in your film review, but I know he's a little, what people would say is on the undersized side. But if you look at Daquan Jones 2 years ago, prior to the injury, it was almost the perfect fit. I know people want that bigger Williams type of guy, the big Pat Washington type. And I agree. I also want that because the Achilles of this Bills defense has been their nickel. They're already running an undersized defense. So the vulnerability is in the ability to displace them, move them around in the run game. And if you can get that and make them play from behind, that's kind of the path to beating the Buffalo Bills. But when you look at what Daquan Jones was doing before that injury, it really leaned perfectly into this system. Does TJ Sanders show you some of the same things in terms of if he can throw on that 15 pounds? Like we look at the combine weight. He obviously lost some weight for the combine. I think it's going to be easy for him to throw on a little bit of weight. But what you see on the Bills website isn't what Daquan Jones plays at either. He's a little bit of an undersized, penetrating guy, but he's good at not getting displaced in those situations where he can play one. He's not a traditional one tech, but he can do it. Can Sanders fill that role? Maybe not 2025, but going into the future.
I think that's a great point. And to kind of like lead into that, I think people often conflate run defensibility and like run stopping ability on the interior and conflate that with like size purely. Like, oh, well, if you got to stop the run, you have to be 320 pounds or 315 minimum. And the Bills had Daquan lose weight when he came to Buffalo. And his first couple of years, he was playing between like 307 and 310, which is not big hulking one tech type.
Not the way he holds it either.
Yeah, not at all. But it is heavy enough. And then with his play style, it worked. I think with Sanders, you look at his frame, he does have the capacity to add on muscle. And he even talked about it, like being willing and able to go up to like 310, play at that weight. Who knows, maybe he goes a little bit more. I think the key for him is it looks like his frame can support it. And 2, he plays with such violence and burst and pop that at times, I've said it on shows and I've said it on Twitter, like he moves so fast at times, it's like he transports from like one gap to the other. So even if he adds on some weight and he loses some juice, he has juice that he can afford to lose. But with the leverage he can play with, and if he can add a little more weight, he shows that fight, that tenacity, and then you just got to refine the technique, the block recognition, being able to drop the knee and reduce your surface area to handle some blocks in the run game. But I think he can. It's just going to be a matter of will he, and also too, do they opt for him for that type of role, or do they want to keep him more as like, no, juice, get upfield, we'll figure somebody else out. That's a really good question to ask, not just for this year, but going forward, especially considering what the contract situation looks like and who's on the roster at defensive tackle. It's essentially just him, Ed, and then Dwayne Carter going forward, and kind of what that group looks like.
Yeah, I don't know that they need to lean on it this year. I do think that they are expecting big things out of Daquan Jones coming back. It seems like they're leaning on him to get back to some form, so I'm hoping that does ring true. And obviously, TJ Sanders signing his contract here before training camp starts, awesome. We can move forward without having that linger into training camp. So my player on the defense that I'm most excited to get an eye on is Michael Hoyt. I think this is a piece that's different in terms of archetype that the Bills have brought in at these positions. And I think they have a specific plan for how they want to deploy him. And I don't know if they'll show us in training camp exactly how they want to deploy him. And it does kind of stink that we're going to have to wait 6 weeks to see how it comes out. But I try to think of it, and Greg talks about this a lot, that if we were going to make a trade late in the season, we're probably not getting a player that could be as impactful as a Michael Hoyt will be to this defense. So I'm just trying to think of it as, the suspension stinks, but you're going to get him at a point where you're probably going to need bodies on that line. But what I'm most interested to see is that I had Cody Alexander of Match Quarters on the show this week, and we were talking mostly about the linebackers, but I asked him because he's a big fan of how hybrid players are becoming such an impactful part of NFL defenses. And I asked him, who on the Bills roster do you think could maybe potentially be that hybrid? And I was thinking about defensive backs that kind of fit the mold of like can come up and hit, guys like that. And he goes, you're looking at all the wrong spots. It's Michael Hoyt. Michael Hoyt is the hybrid player. And that got me so excited for what I want to talk about when we get into the schematics of what I'm looking at defensively. I think that he's going to be a big part of the changes that we see out of this, what people call soft coverages of Sean McDermott, typical defense where they're just rushing for. I think he's going to be a guy that they drop into coverage and that they kind of mix some simulated pressures with. And he's the one that drops back, or that he is a pass rusher that can come in on the inside, run some stunts. Like, I want to see more stunts. He can do all those things. He might not do it at a high level, but he's the kind of guy that's always sniffing around the ball come playoffs. I think he's going to be a fan favorite where it's like he just makes the plays at the right time and that motor's always going, where you're going to see. I know everyone's excited about the Bosa move. I hope that move works out for the Bills, but I think Hoyt's going to be the one that come into the season will have had the biggest impact along that defensive line this year.
I think that's a super fair point. And Hoyt was, I forget where he was, but he was one of my top free agent targets for the Bills this offseason. Same for Eric as well. And he was a guy, I mentioned this in shows during the offseason. I watched a lot of Rams defense last year because Verse was awesome, but I love Kobe Turner. And then they also had Cam Kitchens, safety from Miami as a rookie, and I wanted to see how he was progressing. And every time I was watching Rams games, I kept seeing like this defensive lineman flash. And sometimes he was at edge, sometimes he was a defensive tackle, sometimes he was off the ball. And so finally, after like the third game, I was like, what position is, like, what is happening here? And it was Michael Hoyt. And so that I made a note and went back in this offseason to study him. And it's everything you said. Like, the schematic capability with him is so fun, especially if they utilize him the way the Rams did, or kind of like how the Packers did with Clay Matthews back in the day in that spinner type of role. Like, he might be rushing off the edge. He might be in the A gap. He might be over the center. He might be off ball. He might drop into coverage. He might blitz. Like, he might be running a stunt, and he could be the spiker. He could be the looper, or you could just let him play off the edge and be like, okay, get some regular edge reps and crush guards as they try and pull. He brings a level of chess piecery and schematic potential, in addition to physicality and violence, that, like you said, they have not had in a very long time. And it is a bit out of the ordinary to have that type of skill set and potential in this defense. And I like him as a player, but it makes me even more excited because I hope his addition is a breadcrumb towards the direction that I hope this defense goes in schematically.
Yeah, absolutely. And they needed the depth, even if he is just an edge player, right? They needed that depth. And
100%.
I try to pump brakes all the time. It's kind of one of my bits is pumping brakes. And I'm trying to pump my own because I don't think, like I said at the start of this, schematic changes aren't always an overnight big change in how they do things. And sometimes it doesn't even always show up right away. It's something that they kind of hold on to till the end of the season. With Hoyt, it'll be interesting because he's going to come in halfway through the season.
Yeah.
And so the Bills defense we see before he's involved to the Bills defense we see as they ramp up towards the playoffs could be a completely different team that isn't really on tape for a lot of these teams as they get through to that second half of the season.
To your point, like, if they want to use him the way that we hope they do, they don't have another person that can occupy that role without him. So like that type of package or that type of look, exactly your point, could be completely ghost and absent. And then all of a sudden he comes back and it's like, whoa, where's this been? It's like that guy, there's only got one guy that can do that, and he hasn't been there. That's a great point.
Yeah, no, so I'm super excited about that. Let's switch it over to schematically defense, and I'll lead off this one because I've been dreaming this up on episodes here for a while, and I know that I'm probably in fantasy land a little bit, but I want to see more where we saw Sean McDermott take over the defense and be the play caller. We saw a much more aggressive defense in terms of blitzing. I was hoping last year Eric was at camp and he saw a lot of the safeties in the box coming on the blitz. We saw a lot of that. I want to see a defense that still at its core is the whatever people want to call soft zone. It's a zone league. The Bills are going to play their quarters, their two high safety looks. That's not going to change. But what I want to see is how are they? I think it's gotten a little stagnant on the pre-snap level over the last year of how they're disguising some of these things. It wasn't as creative a year ago as it had been in the past when you had Poyer and Hyde. I want to see you have a Cole Bishop, you have a Taylor Rapp. Both of these guys are explosive athletes that can come up on the line of scrimmage. They could be a threat to blitz, or it could just be a simulated pressure, and they can get back into a too high shell look. You have Taron Johnson, who's a very good blitzer. Bringing him on a simulated pressure, or he could get back and be a too high safety. He's shown some of that wrinkle that they have there where they'll throw him back as a safety. But also you have two linebackers who are made in that same mold who can come in and be either simulated pressure. I want opposing quarterbacks to have no idea who's coming, and any of them can come at any moment, and they are actually sending them. They're not just decoys. So every once in a while, it's a Cole Bishop. Every once in a while, it's a Taron Johnson, and then you're dropping a Hoyt back into coverage. You're dropping a Walker back into coverage just because he's a big buy somebody. And then along the line, paired with that simulated pressure, with that who's coming, we don't know, stunts, right? When I watched Joey Bosa's film, I didn't always love what I saw. I think he has lost a step, but one of the areas that I really liked was his ability to stunt. Hoyt's ability to play off the stunt. I think Ed Oliver's ability to play off the stunt. The Bills haven't really gone into that bag as deep as I would like them to go. And so I'm hoping this training camp, we see more about it with Ryan Nielsen. Maybe we'll get a little bit more aggression along the defensive line. And I want to see that paired with that back end. Who's coming? Where are the stunts coming from? Because all you got to do is buy a second, right? The NFL is all about my quarterback needs to have a positive EPA. Your quarterback needs to have a negative EPA. How do I get there? It's buying a second. And so that's the dream world I want to live in, is Sean McDermott getting back to his his Coach Johnson days and getting a little bit more aggressive in the play calling.
Yeah, and to your point, like, all you need is to buy that extra little beat. Like, the difference between the ball coming out in 2.5 seconds versus 3 seconds is a world of difference. So if you can just create that little hesitation somehow, some way in the process from snap to pass, you're in such a better spot for the Bills. What you said is essentially baked into mine. I'll keep a specific segment for what I was going to talk about, but I'm right there in lockstep with you. Like, I keep trying to find a way to, like, label it properly. I just want them to do more to mentally tax an offense. I want more 5-man pressures. I want more sims. I want more creepers. I want more stunts. I want more non-traditional Tampa coverage on the back end. I want more press. I want more man. I want more match coverage. Like, and I want them to be able to be proficient in enough things that, to exactly to your point, like, you don't know what's coming. So that way, when you're on third down, if you're an opposing offense, like Eric and I talked about last week, you can't just sit there and be like, well, the Bills are probably going to be in cover 3, so let's call some stuff to attack cover 3. Oh, they're in cover 3. Boom, first down. It's easy. That's part of the reason they have such huge struggles on third down. And I think now that they have some of those body types, like something that, you mentioned it with the second level, like Taron Johnson, Matt Milano, and Terrell Bernard are all very good blitzers.
And in coverage.
Yes,
right?
and in coverage. So lean into that. Like, be more schematically creative, schematically viable, and then use whoever within them to attach on and create more 5-man pressures. Ryan Nielsen's teams, going back to his time when he was in New Orleans several years ago, have always been towards the top of the league in terms of 5-man pressure rate. So 3 consecutive years, New Orleans when he was a co-DC and then full defensive line coach, in Atlanta as the defensive coordinator, Jacksonville as the defensive coordinator. Jacksonville and Atlanta, they were both top 3 in 5-man pressure rate, and then in New Orleans, they were 9th. So I'm expecting that. I'm also expecting to see some more man coverage on the back end with Coach Pellegrino coming in from New England. So I love that point from you, and it's baked into mine. And I've also been hoping for that for years.
It's been something I've been asking for.
And you mentioned a key point. Like, I remember saying this a couple of years ago. Like, Sean McDermott he's from the Jim Johnson tree in Philly, and Jim Johnson was like, we're going to punch you in the mouth. We're going to blitz. We're going to attack. We're going to do all these things. And McDermott, really from his time in Carolina, was like, we're going to rely more on the front 4 and then just play coverage behind it. And I keep waiting for him to try, like, I don't know, just tap into who he was born to be, like, to your point.
Yeah, and they need it, right? Like, I think that was the biggest issue last year for the defense, was just that 0.5 seconds difference of leaving a cornerback out to dry. These guys can't always cover for 3-4 seconds. Being able to get some of those pressures. We know the splits, unless you're Joe Burrow, the splits on pressures against quarterbacks is dramatic. You're dropping a good 30 points in EPA when you're actually getting some pressures. And so I know everybody wants sacks, but even just generating those looks, getting a split second, buying some time, it's going to make all the difference to getting off the field on a third down this year, which the Bills got to get better at doing. Let's swap it over to the offensive side of the ball, and I will let you go first. Who offensively this year, not a lot of changes on the offensive side of the ball, which is great. It was a historically good offense the last couple of seasons. But who would be the guy that you're keeping an eye on in camp this year to maybe become a bigger part of the offense or take a leap or whatever it is?
I have somebody who I think I know what your answer is going to be, so I'm going to leave that for you. But who I think is for you is definitely up there for me. I'm going to go with Dalton Kincaid.
I like it.
Just I know where a lot of the discourse is on him. He seems to be very polarizing now. I feel like everybody's in two ends of the spectrum. He was banged up last year. It was only his second year. Let's see what he can do this year. And then the other side, which is like, nope, he's a bust. He's a waste. Nothing's working out. And when you go and watch the tape, you see the technical fluidity within his game that's present. You see what he can be as a route runner and as a pass catcher. But for whatever reason, him and Allen were not on the same page last year. There were a lot of disconnects deep between the two of them, but even then just in the underneath, times where Kincaid would keep moving, but Allen thought he was going to settle. And then next time, Kincaid thinks he should settle, and Allen thinks he's going to keep moving. They just didn't really have that rapport that you'd like them to see. Then he gets banged up with the knee. He's got the shoulder injury. He's fighting through multiple important body part injuries throughout the year. And then mixed in with all of that is, I really feel like to unlock his value and unlock what having two good tight ends can bring, both of your tight ends need to be viable as pass catchers and as run blockers. And he is very willing in the run game, but his frame and his technique lends itself to him not being a plus run blocker.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to see, can he be more adequate as a run blocker? Can we truly start to unlock things? Or do they just go, you know what? We've got Alec Anderson that we like to bring in for jumbo packages. We've got Jackson Hawes. Maybe we just lean into more of Dalton Kincaid being an actual wide receiver just where he can be a mismatch. Slot. Yes, and big slot and go from there. I think he's got potential. I think writing him off is just far too early for him. But I really do think 12 personnel is like the greatest mismatch creator from a personnel grouping. Yeah. And if he can just become consistently adequate as a run blocker with what he is as a receiver, that's so important. And especially as they look to fill the Mac Hollins role of that like big-bodied blocker on the duo and the type of runs they like to engage in, I think Kincaid could go a long way towards kind of force multiplying and unlocking a lot of the offense.
Yeah, I think what hurt Kincaid last year was the expectations.
Yes, fair.
When Stephon Diggs got traded, there was a lot of, he's going to be wide receiver one, and I don't think that
was... it too. I expected him, my quote was, I expected him to be like the tip of the spear with the passing games.
Yes, and a lot of people did, and I understood buying into that idea, but it was probably too high of expectations. Then he didn't meet them. And one of the most frustrating thing about covering this game is when you do go back and watch the why it didn't look the way it did. It's so close. Yeah. And if he catches 3 or 4 of those deep shots that just were misconnects, or if he and Allen were on the same page a handful more times, the stats look totally different. And the conversation we're having about the players is totally different. And those thin margins, it really is a game of inches. So I don't know if you knew where I was going or not. Probably a lot of people do. The guy that I'm always keeping an eye on, and I've been on the hype train for him for a few years now, is Khalil Shakir. I think there's more. I think there's more meat on the bone for Khalil Shakir. And to me, it's not so much him that I'm keeping an eye on. It's how is Joe Brady going to utilize him in the offense? Because I don't know that he is I think that he hasn't been totally properly used. I liked last year them getting him more looks in terms of the screen game. He was obviously super productive, getting his hand in the ball. It's something that's the one thing I hated the most about Dorsey was inability to find manufactured touches for your playmakers. I think Shakir has more towards that wide receiver one. I don't think he can maybe ever be a wide receiver one, but like a St. Brown, an Amon-Ra St. Brown type player. I think he's a close to that level player where you can kind of make him the go-to target in the offense. And he let in targets, he let in yards and all that stuff. I think there's more meat on the bone for the Bills to be able to use him in that way. And so I'm hoping that he answers that kind of question of who is wide receiver one, because I don't know that Coleman's going to come out of anywhere and just become something great. And I think everything else is still on the everybody eats train. We're getting close to time here though. So outside of players offensively, is there anything you want to see schematically? Mine is more play action.
That's mine. They had an 18% play action rate last year, which was 27th in the league. That is, and this is going to sound super nitpicky, right? Because their offense was so productive from like a raw stats perspective, from an advanced metrics perspective. You have the MVP quarterback. So to sit here and be nitpicky, but
now's the time to be nitpicky.
Yes, fair. Yeah. It's borderline, like I don't want to be dramatic. Like it's borderline criminal that their play action rate was so low, considering how good
it is.
Their run game was. Yeah, and how good Allen is off of play action. Like I wanted more of what the Lions do in terms of their play action rates. Part of having such a great run game isn't just that the run game's great in and of itself, but it's what it can lead to in the play action game. That just seems like such an easy way to create explosives, get Allen on the move, and just make this offense even further of a problem. That's the big one for me. And it doesn't have to be crazy, right? You don't have to go from 18, percent to 40. 18, like you mentioned earlier, 18 to 28.
Give me
a 10 percentage
more.
point increase is huge, but I feel like that is a huge missing element. And again, there weren't many because this offense was tremendous last year in a lot of ways.
But yeah, you got to stay fresh. You got to keep things fresh on it. And with the same thing we talked about on the defensive side of the ball, trying to eliminate a second or a half a second.
Yeah.
Offensively, you're trying to buy yourself a second. You're trying to move, like you said, get him in play action, move him around so he's really stressing the defense.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that I want to see out of this offense. But anyways, this kind of conversation is what gets me excited for camp. I know that Sean McDermott is probably going to be a little bit more close to the vest this year with HBO coming into town. I'm sure he's not going to want to put anything out there on Hard Knocks that they're going to get any type of competitive advantage on.
Well, because we're already going to be tweeting all that stuff anyway.
We at Cover One are giving away all the details and secrets that nobody else has, and teams definitely follow us to make sure they can get in on the inside scouting. Speaking of which, anybody out there who hasn't already followed Cover One, please follow us on any social media platforms that you've got. Make sure that you check out cover1.net. Become a Discord member. One Pass members are awesome. That's been going on all year. Great conversations in there all the time. You can always find Anthony on Disguise Coverage, the Film Room, on Twitter, breaking down everything going into the year. You can always find myself and Greg on the Cover One Buffalo podcast and the Cover One Buffalo post-game show as we get back into the season. But appreciate again Dell, everybody at 26 Shirts, my man Josh over here flexing on us, Maniac for getting this set up. Pat Moran, big shout out to Pat Moran getting us set up with the audio visual stuff over here for the day. The Step Brothers podcast coming on next. Can't wait to hear what they've got to say. Appreciate everybody, and we are out.